Hi, I'm Roberto, and this is Riffing Off My Life. Okay, let's see. That looks nice. Let's use that. Welcome to episode 2.5. Episode 3 will air this coming Sunday, August the 2nd. Going forward, I'll stick to a once weekly or bi-weekly upload schedule depending on how busy life gets, but I'll definitely aim for more often rather than not. Today I need to ask your opinion on some changes I just made to my channel artwork and my video intro animation. I could just make the changes. It is my channel after all, but I also want to choose the aesthetic elements that make the most sense, especially to you, my viewer. When I've collected enough input, I'll adjust the settings to the majority preferences, although nothing is binding and I may change it around a few times depending on the analytics. Meanwhile, I'll go with my newest channel art and intro music. Do you prefer the A, the old channel art, or B, the new channel art, or C, the alternate channel art? Question 2, do you like the old music or the new music? Question 3, which of the following clips do you like better, the old intro or the new intro? Finally, do you prefer if I have my glasses on or off? I wear them, so not so much for anonymity, but so that you don't see my eyes following the script that's running on my iPad that I use as my teleprompter. I think you might find that distracting. However, if you don't mind my eyes moving, I won't wear the sunglasses. Of course, if you like the effect where I remove my shades at some point in the video, I can keep doing that too. I made a poll of these questions and it's right in my community tab. If you can't find that tab, just go ahead and put your answers down in the comments section below. And I'll take those into account also. Thanks, and now to my bonus stories. To tide you over till the episode 3 release this coming Sunday, enjoy this epistolary short story, A Reluctant Farewell, that I wrote back on August the 15th, 2020. 1/2/16, 8 a.m. This morning, when Skipper and I stopped by the mudroom to get her leash on for our morning walk, I noticed for the first time two things. How the slanted light catching her muzzle showed white where there used to be sandy-colored fur, and how she deliberately moved rather than energetically. Normally, her whole body would be emotive of her absolute joy at the prospect of trotting half a block to the grassy commons where she would do her business and where I would sort out my thoughts. It was not a gradual state change, but a sudden one, like crossing a demarcation between two countries, or switching off the lights inside a sealed vault. 1/8/16, 1:30 p.m. I feed Skipper at noon, but it was maybe an hour later when she actually consumed half her bowl. She might finish the rest later. It's been a couple of weeks now, and I'm only just registering the fact that her appetite seems diminished compared to how it was 2 months ago, when she would wolf down her kibble. Last week I tried moistening her food with water and later broth, and that seemed to do the trick. But today it wasn't enough. She's 12 years old now, according to the shelter, perhaps 13. Of course, her appetite was bound to change, like mine. I'm 70 and I don't even get up to eat breakfast anymore. Maybe a cup of coffee and toast with marmalade or kippers. 1/11/16, 5 p.m. Skipper has become quite whiny and demanding of my attention, especially in the evening hours between supper and bedtime. I don't know how I'm going to put up with this. I've been used to silence since my wife passed away 5 years ago. Now I have another female to answer to again, and perhaps to say goodbye to before long. Usually she wants out, but when I go to open the door, she looks at me funny, like I've suddenly lost my psychic connection with her. It occurs to me that it's something new, a need I wasn't aware of, and that I'm supposed to meet, perhaps pain. Or what? 1:15/16, 9 a.m. Our walk took much longer today, not because of Skipper, but because of me. Lately, just walking 100 feet, I feel exhaustion, dizziness, and mild chest pain. Normally, I can walk 2 miles, and at worst, I will work up a sweat and maybe feel minor muscle aches afterward. I've sometimes wondered if there is a correlation between our pets' trauma and our own. I've known people who lost a parent or child and months later, their family dog getting sick or injured and dying or being euthanized shortly afterward. Could it also work backwards that we get sick when our pets do? 2/2/16, 10 p.m. I don't normally write this late, but it's the first chance I've had after finally being settled in my house for home care. My kids came by earlier this week to make sure I was set up after being discharged from the hospital. Forgive me, I'm getting ahead of myself. I suffered a stroke on January the 16th, shortly after my morning walk with Skipper. The EMTs explained to me that I was lying on the floor of the mudroom, the door wide open. My neighbor called 911 after having retrieved Skipper, who had wandered to the yard, banging, whining, and scratching at the front door. The neighbor came over to return Skipper and saw me on the floor. The EMTs said that Skipper was in the neighbor's care. 4/2/16, 8 a.m. Skipper did not make it to her birthday, which would have been today. She did manage to settle down after a couple of weeks into my home care. Ironically, just as I was beginning to improve, she started getting worse. Much more so than in the past 3 months. I'm thankful for my neighbors and kids for watching her while I was recuperating. Still, we did manage to have 3 days together, and we both had ourselves a long, it seemed that way, walk from the house to the end of the block. I guess she wanted to make sure I was okay before saying her goodbye. My next reading is an opening chapter of a novel that is a work in progress called Road Rash. I wrote this during National Novel Writing Month, November 2009. And I'm considering reading this in installments here on this channel, but first I've got to get back up to speed with the plot and character arcs, not to mention the solution to the murder mystery. And now Chapter 1 of Road Rash. Chapter 1. You're stepping on my lines again, Morris, I pointed out to my collaborator. This was the 3rd time she'd done this, and I was beginning to think it was a deliberate ploy for control, a need to show who the alpha was in this community arts project. We'd just been laying out the chalk for our mural design, which, when completed, would be sealed with an industrial-grade clear resin that the contractor said would resist the effects of a thermonuclear explosion from a mile away. I doubted that somehow. But I'd done my homework and was convinced that we had chosen the right guy to make our work a permanent exhibition at the Benson Woods inaugural skateboard park. Sheila Morris, my design partner, and I used to be skater kids before going off to art school. We weren't the closest of friends, but we shared the same sensibilities, a discovery that led to our first joint effort, a skater zine we called KSA, Killer Skate Army. At that time, we thought our whole lives were going to be about skating. Independently, we each realized that our skating skills were a dime a dozen, but the deck designs we created were getting serious cred on the street and major buzz on the internet. So we formed a zine and advertised by word of mouth. At the back of each issue, we featured a new deck design done up in Photoshop and reproduced in black toner. This was the reader's payoff for having to sift through whatever other garbage we saw fit to print, which was basically bad porn, crappy comics, and amateurish reviews of the latest acts in our local punk scene. Although it was a good enough zine to get a decent readership anyway, our real motivation was to one-up each other to see whose designs would get the most orders. What we didn't anticipate was the extent to which we would become famous in the skating world. One day, while plowing through a bag of blue corn tortilla chips and a 6-pack of Corona, Morris and I got a phone call from Zach Falcon, the skating god come down from Mount effin' Olympus. He had a deal to offer us. We joined his team of graphic designers and artists, and we would get more money in a day than we would ever see in a month on our current earnings. This would mean no more student loans for either of us. We had just put in our applications and wound up being accepted by the same art school, the Chicago Brewer Art Institute. How could we resist? What we didn't see was that we were being used in more than the apparent way. Sure, we knew that we were giving up rights to our own work and selling them to Falcon, who owned the company and therefore the copyright. But at the price he was paying us, we didn't give a shit. We figured that we would venture out on our own someday, and when we had stockpiled enough to set up our own design studio, we would be set. But the real reason for Falcon's interest in us was control. He wanted to create a skateboarding conglomerate. He didn't want any other board company to get a leg up on him, even if it meant scouting out the hottest young newbies and getting them to work for him at rates that were a drop in the bucket for him. That part of it we learned later. And then we both jumped off the cliff together, turning in our resignation on the day that he was going to unveil his new line of designs. But that would come later. In the meantime, it was a real help to our career to get the training, acquire the core skills, and learn the history, and understand the nuances of the visual media we would use to capture the hearts and minds of skaters from all over the world. It was, in the end, a lot of hard work, much harder than I could have imagined, but it really honed me as an artist. I think Sheila got burned out on the structure because her grades really tanked that first year. She said that her instructors were all trying to stifle her. I remember running into her one day at the student union. She looked like that figure on the bridge from Edvard Munch's painting, minus a scream, just haggard and pale and gaunt. She told me that her work was suffering on all fronts, not just at school, and that something had to give. It wasn't that Falcon was overworking us. We set our own hours as long as we met our deadlines, and we were both on top of that. I think that the reality of the design business was beginning to set in and our responsibilities were increasing. To have to juggle the nonstop work projects with the steady stream of school projects took its toll on Sheila and myself. But Sheila had had enough and quit school, burying herself in work and little else. I was worried that she was doing drugs, but her roommate Maggie assured me she was mainly spending her free time sketching or gaming. Relax, Dillweed. You can just redraw the line, can't you? It's just chalk mark. Chill out, Juarez. Sheila's retort brought me back to the present day. She added with casual disdain, sometimes you can be a real prima donna, Holmes. What's up with you, Sheila E? You on the rag? Your boyfriend not finished at the same time as you? I felt free to give as good as I got. That's how our relationship was. Constant petty bickering served as the veneer over the real substance of mutual respect for each other as creative prodigies. Juarez, you only wish you had a boyfriend. You ain't had any action since you were a virgin in... Oh yeah, that's right. You're still a virgin. I ain't no virgin, and I ain't no queer. What I am is picky. Too many skanks and hose bags out there. I'm gonna wait till I get my debts paid off before I start a family. So what's the use of getting involved with anyone before I have the money to pay for a family? I'd explained this to Sheila before. It was her business if she got pregnant and couldn't work, because she had to take care of her kid. So far she had dodged that bullet, but I didn't think she could keep it up forever. Look, it's almost sunset, and we gotta get some fixative down on these lines, or we're gonna lose our hard work to tomorrow's condensation. I'm sorry that I stepped on your precious lines, but I'm really in a hurry to save both our butts. Now that we're not working for Falcon anymore, we can't afford to lose this commission, dude. Can you just get that through your perfectionist mind for a moment and pick up the pace? I wasn't going to admit that she had me there, but I just shut up and got going. Soon it was too dark to see my hand. In retrospect, we could have saved time and effort by simply laying down our underdrawing with spray lacquer, but our benefactor, the local commerce chapter, wanted to have their name on the dedication plaque and insisted we allow plenty of room for changes each step of the way. At $50,000 for our first commission, we were both happy to give up almost 75% of creative control to the client. They had a panel of business people, creatives, and a couple of community rights activists who wanted to make sure our design was ultra-inclusive, non-offensive, and totally cutting edge, none of which would come together if everyone had their way. What would result was boring crap. We wanted to prove that we could step on some toes and still have an engaging design that would speak to the community about the joys of a healthy activity in skating. But we also wanted to be cool so that the kids wanted to skate on it. In the morning we came back and found our work mostly intact, except for where it was smeared in a dark brownish red, like rust or blood. We found out it was blood, a lot of it. We must have been the first to discover the corpse because there was no police tape marking off the area that he had been killed in. Yes, I said he. It was definitely a guy because we could tell the gender right away due to its being naked. We could even state for the record that this guy was tall and Caucasian, possibly in his late 30s or early 40s, and really, really fit. We could tell he was a natural blonde. Use your imagination here. What we couldn't tell was who this corpse had been in life. No ID, no clothes, and no head. Sheila and I agreed that we were definitely not going to get involved in this mess. When we called the police, we would tell them everything that we knew. Then we would step into the background and bury ourselves in lesser paying jobs and try to make it until the next big project. We still each had more than enough savings from what we'd earned from Falcon to keep us both going 3 to 6 months. We didn't know anyone who could possibly be connected to this killing, and more importantly, we didn't want to know. The funny thing about trouble is that it will find you. You never have to look for it. It just finds you. We did call the police and they set up all the typical stuff you see on TV. Crime tape, investigators crawling over every inch of the ground. Thank God we had the design fixed with spray. And uniformed cops and cars warding off the general public. Oh, and a horde of TV news production teams. One of the news reporters had just finished taping us and we were getting ready to speak to another reporter when the chief detective came over and asked us to walk with him to a quiet spot. We were not prepared for the shock. I understand that you were both employees of Zach Falcon. How well did you know him personally? We have a match on his blood between what we found here and what's on his record. And we found his car parked in the woods less than half a mile from here. End of chapter 1. As I mentioned in the intro, I'd appreciate it if you took the poll about artwork choices for this channel. Just go to my community tab and look for the post entitled Channel Art Choices. I'll also look at the comments below so you can give feedback here also. Thank you. Here we must part ways. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your environment and help keep it beautiful. Be at peace and of good faith. Bye.
Hi, it's me again, Roberto. Thanks for watching. If you like my content, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Also, click the notification bell so you don't miss any new updates of upcoming material. Thanks. Bye.